Hello, and welcome to ConTinual, the never-ending convention. My name is Jean Marie Ward, and we've got a special treat for you today. A panel called Mixology, Toasting the New, featuring the people you know and love from that wonderful dumpling show, Barbara Haimes, Malcolm Ginn, and Jennifer Rudd. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about how we celebrate the end of the most challenging year many of us can remember and look forward to a better 2021. And to do that, I've brought the team back, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves for those of you who missed Indisputable Signs of Intelligent Life, dumplings, and let them tell you a bit about themselves, and then we'll get on to the stuff you're really here for, the alcohol. I know this, I'm a writer. Okay, take it away, folks.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rudd. I am a chef instructor at City College of San Francisco. And this is like Team Food Geek or Geek Food Team. So we're here today to show you a nice range of options for the new year.
I'm Malcolm. I am an amateur mixologist, but I have lots of geeky ideas, and I'd love to bring them to you here.
And our ringer.
I'm Barbara Haimes, and I teach people about wine and food together, and I drink a lot.
She's like incredibly well regarded here in the Bay Area for her knowledge, not only of food, but of alcohol. And I've had more than one person tell me she's got the best palate of anyone they've ever met. So she's got all the good information. Do you want to start us out and talk about bubbles?
Sure.
We love bubbles. All right, we're going to turn it over to Barbara and start with bubbles.
That works.
All right, so I love bubbles. We're talking about celebrating the new year, but personally, I would drink bubbles every day. There's always something to celebrate. So I've selected some wines from very reasonably priced to very expensive for you as recommendations for what might be good on New Year's Eve. If you like beer with food, try sparkling wine. Why am I not saying try champagne? I'm not saying try champagne because all champagne is sparkling wine, but not all sparkling wine is champagne. The French are very fussy. Champagne comes from a region in northeastern France, and people, the French are fussy, and they don't want us to mention the word champagne unless we're pouring their wine.
They are very particular. Okay. I want to get into that a little bit. I know that Prosecco, the Italian version of sparkling wine, is one thing. Champagne is something else. And then there are a lot of things that say they are made in the traditional method and imply they're sort of kind of like champagne. Could you give us a quick rundown of what those differences are? And then please show me, I want to know, I confess, I'm broke. What's the cheap version? So could you?
Again, we call it sparkling wine, huge category. Every country that makes wine makes sparkling wine. All different names, but there are a couple of different ways that the wine is made. And Prosecco, which is a very popular and delicious wine, is made differently than champagne. And so it's, instead of being aged in the bottle, it's aged in a tank and then put in the bottle. There's great Prosecco, and there's less great Prosecco. So, and you could be like me, I will be raising a glass by myself, right? So I probably will go for something that's less expensive rather than more expensive, but I want it to be delicious. So
yes.
Actually, The first wine that I'm recommending is a Prosecco. If you want to go budget, let's see if I can get this. Does this work?
Mm-hmm.
This is Prosecco from Asolo in the Prosecco, the region of France.
Italy.
Italy.
They're so similar, yeah.
It can only be labeled as Prosecco if it comes from northeastern Italy, and this is from Asolo is the place it comes from. And this is almost half the price. It's under $10
Mm-hmm.
of some of the best-selling Proseccos that are just over $10, and it's absolutely delicious. So this is my budget recommendation. And
What
then
does it taste like? Is it sweet? Is it hard and dry and flinty?
it's not.
Because
It's dry, but it's also generous, and it tastes lush and generous, and it's not flinty at all. It's just got a little bit of bitter almond in the finish, and the bubbles, because it's aged in a tank and not in the bottle, the bubbles are a little softer.
Mm-hmm.
It has less pressure than champagne, so it's a little softer than as champagne would be, or something made in the traditional method.
Okay, because I confess I'm not a brute girl.
So you might like this. Yeah.
So, okay, that sounds, and that I take it it's a good mixer too if you're making a champagne cocktail like a poinsettia or.
Or for New Year's Day, you can make a mimosa with it.
Oh, I'm cool with that. So cool. Okay, and what's your next up the list recommendation?
So I've got recommendations for more expensive and better, finer Prosecco. But what I'd like to do is go on to the sparkling wines that are made like champagne, but they're from other places.
Okay. We can put your additional recommendations either in the credits or in the comments. So let's go on with the sparkling wines.
So the next one I want to recommend is a cava. It's from Spain. And cava is made just like champagne. It gets its second aging in the bottle. And cava is about often half the price of champagne. And a good cava is a delicious thing. And I have here I'm pouring the budget cava, again, right around $10, but delicious.
There's
nothing better.
What is the name of that wine?
Segura Vitas. This is Segura Vitas cava. And cava is not a place. It just designates on the bottle the way the wine is made, meaning in the traditional method, the way that champagne is made. And
so it gets its bubbles in the bottle, not in the tank.
Right. So the first fermentation of the grapes happened. The base wine is made, if you want to call it that, and then it's put in a bottle, and a secondary fermentation takes place, which is where the bubbles come in, and that happens actually for longer in cava than it does in non-vintage champagne. So there's vintage and non-vintage. And non-vintage in champagne and in sparkling wine, it's to have a house style. Every year, if you buy Segura Vitas or if you buy Moet and Chandon or whatever you buy of these bigger producers, it's going to taste about the same because they're going to blend from several years. And so Segura Vitas cava, delicious. This is going to be nice. This is nice and dry. This might be too dry for you. But what's good about it is it's as good with alone, just a toast, or seafood, some oysters, or some, if you can spring for it, some caviar.
Ooh, yes.
Whatever you're having for your New Year's dinner, right? This is just for toasting, but you could use it for toasting. there are some great cavas. Raventos is my absolute favorite cava, and their non-vintage is in the $25 range, but their vintage goes up in the 50 to 75 and even higher range. So Raventos is a really great, if you have the money and you want to have truly a delicious wine, Raventos is good, but Seguravidas is fine anytime. Let's talk about America.
Okay.
And since we have lots to celebrate, American sparkling wine has to be called sparkling wine, but actually you will sometimes see American bottles labeled champagne because America didn't sign the treaty with France. But anyone who makes good sparkling wine, quality I'll say, they call it sparkling wine. So my absolute favorite American sparkling wine is Roederer Estate. And this one comes from Mendocino County, Anderson Valley, and this is a Brut Rosé. So this is a rosé wine made with Pinot Noir. And Roederer Estate is my favorite because it's dry, and yet this has so much depth. You could think if you closed your eyes that you were having a red wine. And it actually has a teeny bit of still Pinot Noir added to it to give it even more depth.
That sounds, I love Pinot. I really do. So that sounds like something I would really like to drink on New Year's Eve.
So Pinot Noir is one of the three main grapes in French sparkling wine. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier. Probably not a grape most people are familiar with. But this is really a crowd pleaser, as good with, I love this with Chinese food. So if I were having those dumplings, I'd be having some Brut Rosé. People always say they want beer with Chinese food. Yeah, why not have some sparkling wine of some sort? And this is always my first choice because it's dry and you almost think you're having champagne, something from Champagne, because it's so dry but so full of flavor, and it's so well made. Most of our wines in Northern California, it's much warmer than in Champagne, so they taste fruitier and kind of bigger. But this is a very well-balanced, restrained, and delicious wine that I can't say enough about. My big favorite. All right, let's quickly go to Champagne. Now Champagne, if we go to France, when we have Champagne, we're gonna have to spend a fair amount of money. There's just no two ways about it. I have to say Costco has its own brand of champagne that's not very expensive and it's pretty good. I've had it. But if you're celebrating New Year's Eve, maybe you want to go just one step up. And you have basically two choices. You can buy something from the big guys. Here, for example, is a non-vintage Moet et Chandon Imperial. And they don't own vineyards. They buy wine from many other people. And you can tell the secret code is on every bottle that tells you, have they grown the grapes themselves and made the wine themselves, or have they bought the grapes and then made the wine? Now they've been buying those grapes for many years. Here's some of my little toys here. This is from Paul Bourget, one of the big houses. They're called the big houses. They've been in business since 1849. Some of them have been in business since the 1700s. And so they know what they're doing, and they make hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of bottles of champagne. The other alternative is what we call grower champagne. And these people make more in a day than a grower champagne makes in a year. Right? So maybe a trade book as opposed to your magnum opus. And so you can decide, but you know the secret code now. So if it's a grower champagne, it says RM on the label. Means that they picked and made the champagne as opposed to just buying the grapes and making the champagne. So RM means récoltant, manipulant, and the big guys like Moet, they are a négociant manipulant. So you can find the code. Here, for example, is the NM you will see, if I can find it. Small. You have to put your glasses on. Can you see it? Can you see it?
Sort of, kind of, but yeah. Now it's a little too close, but I think we can actually use a photograph so that you don't have to see me peering so deeply at the screen.
Anyway, so go to your, just like with books, I like to recommend that people go to their local independent wine shop, right? And get wine and ask them for a grower champagne if you want to try something really unique. And whereas the big guys aren't bad, they make some of the best high-end champagnes in their vintage champagnes, but try a grower champagne. You'll get something that speaks of the place and of the vintage in a very different way than if you have a Moet or a Veuve Clicquot or something like that in non-vintage. If you have vintage, so I recommended La Salle, which is a grower champagne at the minor splurge level, and then Bollinger Grand Année 2008 or 2012, a vintage champagne at the major splurge level. You sold that book? Okay. It's going to be a screenplay? Okay.
Okay. So minor splurge,
somewhere $50, $60-ish, depending where you live, and then Bollinger Grand Année, which they call them tête de cuvée, so it's their top champagne. That is probably about $175 a bottle.
So the difference between selling your book and selling it to a major studio.
That's it. Right. That's exactly it. So, yeah.
And I hope that there will be viewers out there who can say that they're on the selling it to a major studio, but I'd like to raise a glass to all the folks who sold their books and other productions this year, because dang, it was challenging.
It was challenging. So one thing we wanted to talk about is how do you properly open this so that you don't lose all your sparkling wine?
Yes, that was going to be my next question. What is the trick to opening it without breaking a window?
Okay, that's great. So sparkling wine. So champagne and traditional method wines have more pressure in the bottle than a car tire. That's a lot. That's window breaking.
Yes.
So you have to be, or putting out someone else. So you want to be careful. And one of the main things, so Malcolm's going to help me. He's going to open this bottle.
So upper body strength is an important component here.
You don't need it yet. You need it.
Yeah, you basically, you take off the foil, right?
You take off the foil.
And untwist the little wire cap.
Yeah, this is called the cage.
The cage, okay.
Operate right here. Yeah, so if you operate on the table right there, people will be able to
But
see it.
you can't. You have to keep it always at 45-degree angle because gas goes straight up, right? So if you keep your bottle at 45-degree angle,
you're going to get that pressure and hitting the ceiling with the force of a gunshot.
Right. And the other thing is, we all learn from movies or TV that you're supposed to, the bigger the pop, the better. Not true. You don't want that. Your bottle should be very, very cold. This is one. It's really important to have it be cold. And then the cage, hang on a second. The cage, can you see that?
Yes.
Every cage on these kinds of bottles takes 6 turns to open it. So you pull it back and turn it 6 times.
I didn't realize there were 6 turns. I just would turn until it opened.
5, 6. Did that do it? Yep. Yeah, 6 turns. And at that moment, from that moment on, your finger never leaves the top because it could just fly off.
Okay.
And so
I
now
have
we,
it pointed at a plate glass window right now.
right. So one thing we want to do also mostly is we put a big towel or a big napkin over it. I've got a little one just so that you can see better, right? Some people take the cage off at that point. I don't. You don't need to. You just kind of get some room here, put your finger on it. And then the key is not to turn the cork, it's to turn the bottle.
Oh, and you turn the bottle clockwise or anti-clockwise?
Doesn't matter. Okay? So turn the
Okay.
bottle, and then as you're doing that, you're almost pushing the cork. Okay, you're almost pushing the cork back in.
Right.
Right? Because you don't want it to go flying. Okay, can you do it without the thing on? Do you want to take the cage off? Will that be easier? Cage off. Okay. So, yeah, just turn the bottle. You have to break a seal sometimes. It's like,
Feel the cork is moving.
okay, so turn it one way and then the other. Some people, there you go.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it.
So we opened it and we didn't lose any. And we,
Yes.
everybody's got 2, 4, 6 eyes still. So
Yes.
Retained the cork.
you retain
Yes.
it. What glass do we want? This is when I was young. This coupe was what people used. The urban myth was that it was based on a certain anatomical part of Marie Antoinette, but that's urban legend only. And in some ways, it's not a great way to serve champagne or sparkling wine.
Do you want to pour?
No, because what we really love is the are the bubbles.
Right.
So we want to pour slowly. So we really get to make sure your glass is nice and clean, and then we pour that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have to wait, and then pour slowly, slowly till we get just enough
Yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh.
Now people, you know, you can use stemless flutes, Malcolm's favorite. Some people use wine glasses. A white wine glass is really great because you can smell more, but a flute is great because you get to see the bubbles. You can see, perhaps, be over there, that they're bigger than champagne bubbles.
Ah, okay.
That's because there's actually less pressure, and so the bubbles are bigger. As there's more pressure, the bubbles get smaller. And as the wine, good wine, Prosecco doesn't age. You don't have 20-year-old Prosecco, but you do have 20, 30-year-old champagne.
I once drank a 25-year-old Veuve Clicquot. It's one of my treasured memories.
Yeah.
It was a Grand Cru.
You remember what was so great about it?
It was like you had all the sharpness, the brightness, I think is the word, and the bubbles still, but you had this wonderful undertone of toasted almonds and vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more like it was, without being sweet, it was like a dessert, and all of those aromas of the various fragrances for it were like concentrated in the wine. It fortunately it was before, you know, it was a vintage, it was a Grand Cru, and those things do last longer than most champagnes. But yeah, the intensity of it, as opposed to the brightness of, say, a Prosecco, where you're basically splashing this wonderful citrusy thing across your palate, as opposed to, I guess it's the difference between a filet dijois and a Grand Dame. Someone who has, you know, just is new, is young, and someone who has a lifetime of experience and knowledge, and that seemed to be in the glass.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that happens because of the chemical changes called autolysis that take place as the wine ages longer and longer. and you get this toasty, as you said, yeasty, bready, brioche things, all these other characteristics that you don't get in Prosecco, or in most cases in non-vintage traditional method wines.
Mm-hmm.
So now it could be that you love wine, but you don't feel like drinking on New Year's Eve.
Hey, a lot of people cannot drink for health reasons or other reasons, and we really do want to have everybody celebrate, because we're here to toast the new. We're here to lend our voices, to raise the glass to whatever power you believe in for better times ahead. So, however, you can't really do this if your heart isn't in it. And to that end, I know you have prepared a selection of things for people who don't necessarily like champagne or like the bubbles but not the taste, and B, for the folks who, for whatever reason, just don't like alcohol, and that's totally valid. And I understand that Jen has got something that is very seasonal but rather unusual lined up for us.
I do. I have a nice spiced cranberry syrup that I've created for us. And this is fantastic because you can use it as a non-alcoholic mixer to make something super festive. But just a little on the slide, you can also use it to make that delicious mimosa on New Year's Eve. So it works really well with sparkling wine as well as sparkling water. So what we're doing is we're going to start with some pure cranberry juice. And this is 100% pure cranberry juice, as opposed to cranberry cocktail, which has water and sugar in it, and it's much lighter. You really want some intense flavor. So you start with that. And I've got the recipe, and that'll get posted in the notes. But I'm starting with just a quart of it. And then I like this even just in plain water. So I just make a quart of it, and I throw it in my fridge and hang on to it for the season. We're going to add a fair amount of sugar because we're not going to use very much. We're going to make a really concentrated syrup. So we'll start with 4 cups of this, and then we're going to add our sugar. And then for spices, what I have is I've got some cinnamon, and I have some allspice berries here, which is a dry spice. And then I've got some bay leaves, and I've got some rosemary. And the amounts will be posted. And all you do is you put that all together in a pot, and you simmer to reduce it. And once it's reduced down to about 3 cups, you're just going to taste it. And you can taste as you go. And if the cinnamon is strong enough for you, go ahead and take it out. If you want the flavor stronger, once the cranberry strength is strong enough, you can just turn off the heat and allow those spices to keep steeping in there. And then to put together the cocktail, it's completely easy. And so I usually do this in about a 1-to-4 ratio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out my syrup, and I'm going to measure out a little more than an ounce. We'll throw a little bit of ice in there. Mm-hmm. We're going to add our syrup, which is a glorious ruby deep color.
Oh, could you raise that to the camera?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I like that color.
So
that says holiday.
Sparkling water. I made this so it's not too sweet, even though it feels like there might be a lot of sugar. When you taste it, you'll see the cranberry is strong enough that it's not too sweet, but also this is great for adults. But then if you want to make something a little sweeter, you can use ginger ale, or you can use a lemon lime soda like Sprite, and combine that. And then what you do is you have this beautiful sparkling cocktail, mocktail. And then I always think it's fun to kind of gussy stuff up a little bit. So I've got some sparkling cranberries that are on a pick that can just rest here. And what we've got is a beautiful little cocktail. If you don't want to do the cranberries, or if you want to, gild the lily a little bit, you can throw the rosemary in there as well. And you have a really beautiful festive looking cocktail. I keep saying
this is fresh rosemary, right? Fresh rosemary.
And you can certainly use your champagne flutes for this as well if you want to go ahead and treat this just as you would for using some sparkling wine in it, just go ahead and serve it in flutes as well, and that makes it really fun. And as I said, I make the syrup, and then it just holds in the refrigerator perfectly. So I just put it back in the container that the cranberry juice came from, and then I just have it on hand, because I think it's kind of about self-care these days, right? And treating ourselves well. And so if I'm having my typical, container of sparkling water, I take that second to pour it into a glass, maybe add a little syrup or something else to kind of gussy it up a little bit and just make it feel a little more festive, just for my daily water.
Yeah, but hey, it works for me, and I love the color. I mean, it just makes me smile looking at it, sitting there on the table. And, if we've got some time at the end, could you tell us how to make those cranberries, the sparkling cranberries?
Absolutely. It's I can tell you the recipe comes from a website by Heidi Swanson, and the website is 101cookbooks.com, and I can demonstrate how to make those if we have a few minutes at the end.
Okay. And as you say, this can also be for an alcoholic content. Can you use, I have seen lately a succession of syrups available at specialty stores and elsewhere. Can they be used with sparkling water and ginger ale and, lemon lime sodas the same way?
They certainly can be, but what you have to do is you really need to taste them and look at the sugar content. A lot of the commercially available syrups, for my personal taste, tend to run a little too sweet. And so if you then mix them with ginger ale, you might end up with, or with another soda, you might end up with something that's a little too sweet for you. You can counter that a bit with a squeeze of citrus. A squeeze of lime, I think, is particularly nice with cranberry or lemon, and that might kind of offset that sweetness for you. So that would balance it out. What I love about this syrup is it's introducing some of those seasonal, both herbs and spices, and I think it's just a little more unusual, and it's so simple to put together. So that's why I kind of like making them myself. I can control the flavor, and I can control the sugar content a lot better.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound that complicated, actually. I was afraid, when you volunteered to do this, that, oh my goodness, this is something that I will just go nodding my head, but it sounds like it's one pot cooking, sugar and juice and a few spices.
Yep, and then just strain out the spices when the flavor is where you want it, and then you just got it on hand, and super flexible. And so we'll make something like this, and then in our pod, in our circle, some of us drink, some of us don't. If you've got younger kids, you can have this, and you can mix it with sparkling wine. You can mix it with sparkling water or soda. And everybody can kind of be suited, and you all get to feel like you're sharing in the same drink in essence, and the same experience. So it's lovely.
Cool. Very cool. I can think of my younger self and Shirley Temple's. This would have been much better.
This is a very fancy. So I'm going to turn it over to Malcolm, because this is a cold drink, and sometimes what you really need is something like really warm, but with a little kick to it. And Malcolm has got the perfect solution for that.
Oh yes,
All right, you're up. Come on in.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about hot buttered rum.
Ooh.
It's a great holiday drink, a great winter drink, and it's originating from around the 1930s. There was a movie and a book that popularized it, and it's become a very popular staple for a lot of families and communities since then. We have the kettle on, which is super loud, but this cocktail requires hot water. So let me actually start with sort of an interesting idea that I came up with while I was preparing for this. And I need to move these garnishes. Thank you. All right. So hot buttered rum is a mixture of fat and rum and some spices and hot water. So What I have done is prepared some spoons of butter.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if, can you see my finger pointing at the
Yeah, I see them. So that's butter on the spoons, and you've also sprinkled some spices on them, haven't you?
Yeah, so the one that's, this one here, the plainest looking one is just butter.
Mm-hmm.
The middle one is butter that's been compounded with speckloos spices. So for the speckloos cookies, which happen to have a very sort of holiday profile, right? There's cinnamon and nutmeg and so on.
Ginger, yeah.
And then the one on the other end is butter compounded with maple syrup. And it's very easy to compound butter. You just need to take soft butter and you need to mix in whatever spices or sweeteners that you want to mix in.
Mm-hmm.
And you mix it until the butter looks uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order to put them on the spoon, you just sort of scoop it up and you can shape it with even like the side, the palm of your hand. Or you don't actually need to make it smooth for the cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
So for a classic hot buttered rum, I'm just going to use the butter, and I forgot my sugar.
Oh, that's okay. I've got it.
There's sugar involved too? Oh, that sounds good.
There. Yeah. So the easiest one uses spiced rum for the spicing. So you don't have to go out of your way to add spices to the compound butter. You don't have to infuse anything. You can just use, this is my favorite spice rum. It's called Kraken. It's a little bit fancy, but you can totally use, Captain Morgan has a spiced rum that's very well regarded. Gosling's has another one. It's usually a dark rum that's been infused by the distillery with additional spices that usually have a very holiday feel. So for a good hot buttered rum that's simple, you just need the spiced rum, the butter, the sugar, and the hot water. And you can top it with grated nutmeg. I don't really
I see that's a standard mug. What are your proportions of sugar, water, and rum? We know about the butter. It's a spoon.
The butter in the spoon, by the way, is about 1.5 teaspoons, but it can go up to a tablespoon. It really depends on your taste. Beyond that, I use 2 sugar cubes,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe are about a teaspoon each. I use 1.5 to 2 ounces of rum, really, again, depending on your taste and the people that you're serving it to and what they like. I know that, for instance, my mom would like more, but I usually just give her 1.5 ounces because she's kind of a light touch, as am I. But other people I know prefer 2 or even more ounces of rum. It really depends.
Okay.
It is, since it's a warm drink, it's sort of a different experience with respect to what is too much alcohol because it's warm, it sort of volatilizes. And it's sort of a different experience when it's strong.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the analogy for me is that sometimes sake, which is a relatively low alcohol beverage, seems to be a lot more powerful when it's warmed. So I'd watch out for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
My sugar cubes going.
They're on the plate.
Nope. So for the basic mix, I just add the sugar cubes to the butter, which is still on the spoon in the bottom of the mug. I add just a little bit of hot water to cover the butter and the sugar cubes, and I let it sit. Maybe stir a little, make sure the butter slides off the spoon, make sure that the sugar is melted and dissolved.
Mm-hmm.
And then I add the rum. So I like these shot measures because you don't have to get down from the side to make sure you've got the right reading.
Right.
You have to lift it up above your eyes. You can actually, it's hard to see, but the degradations are, the gradations are actually inside.
Oh, cool.
So you can look down into it and still get the right measure.
Ooh, that would be a good Christmas present for somebody.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Or an after Christmas or a other holiday present.
Really any old time.
Yeah.
I stir again, and then I'll top it off with more hot water. And then the final garnish to the simple version is just a little bit of grated nutmeg.
Mm-hmm.
We use a microplane.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
But there are also other ways to grate your nutmeg. So, yeah, what you want. I thought about trying to do this in a glass container so we could see how it was coming together, but we don't really have any good heat-proof glass containers. The final result is that there's a little slick of butter on the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Just like with jams, we can put a pick with a cherry on it.
Mm-hmm.
You can also use a twist of orange.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's the one I've seen most often used with it is citrus. Yeah.
Right, and then these are gigantic for the mug. Orange slices, but sort of traditionally you can use maybe a smaller orange slice or even another citrus, and you can put it over the rim.
Ah.
So it really depends on what you like as far as aesthetics.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And then with the compound butters, it's actually a little simpler because there's less to do. The compound butters can have the nutmeg in them already. The garnishing is the same. The sort of procedure is the same, but you just don't need to track all the sugars. Oh, you want me to talk about that? Okay. So beyond butter-based hot buttered rum,
Mm-hmm.
there is also a tradition of making hot buttered rum batter. And the batter is sort of a premix of all the wonderful rich things that you want to put in the hot buttered rum. It's usually kind of deluxe because a batter usually includes some kind of ice cream and butter and maybe whipping cream.
And flour. It's not like a cake batter.
Right.
But it has the ingredients.
It's a sort of premixed soft thing that you scoop into it. You usually make the batter out of some complex mixture of stuff, and then you freeze it. And then when you put the hot buttered rum together, it's the batter, the hot water, and a little bit of rum. And it comes out all creamy and warm and nice.
So it's sort of like instant eggnog.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And we just happened to I found this at the grocery store the other day. This is one of our local creameries, Strauss, and it's a chai latte ice cream. Chai spices and ginger.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the hot buttered rum, and I came home and I was like, Malcolm, look what I found. Do you want to do one with this?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
With the maple, perhaps?
I don't even think we need butter with it. Or
You don't want
you
to
want to make a super deluxe?
How is it going to be hot buttered rum without butter?
All right, well, there's some cream in here. Malcolm likes, if there's deluxe or super deluxe, I'm here to tell you Malcolm will go for super deluxe. I'm going to add, it's some thin little pieces of some ice cream in there as well. And then we've got the maple butter in there.
And hot water.
And hot water. That'll be good.
It should be excellent.
Really good. Possible I suggested this one out of my own self-interest.
Do you have something that we will have for those of us who happen to be lactose intolerant too?
Well, you can put any kind of, well, if you're doing the ice cream version, you could use you could use frozen coconut, or there's the oat milk base. There's a lot of different ice cream bases. Yeah, they all work.
I think coconut, using coconut oil, like
Oh yeah,
could be
absolutely.
really hot buttered rum with coconut,
Very tropical, and yeah.
That'd be good.
So if you've got cold weather, this is a great way to transport yourself to the tropics kind of
I want
instantly.
to show that one.
Yes. Well, actually, I want to drink it, but I will show it. I'm gonna
Okay.
do your little.
You don't think
garnish.
there's enough nutmeg in there?
Come on, it needs a little nutmeg.
More is better.
Yes. So that's the super deluxe, and you can see that this one, so it's got a little foam on top from the ice cream, but as I
Yes.
stir it up, you can see it actually looks a little creamy.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to take one for the team, and I'm going to have a sip of
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's good. It's really,
And here I'm stuck with tea
I
because
know.
I have to be sober at the end of the show.
And you definitely get that strong alcohol because of the warmth of it. It's not overwhelmingly creamy or dairy. It just adds that little bit of richness that I think is really so delicious.
Mhm.
Nice.
Okay. And is there more?
Well, what do you think? Do you want to do some sparkling cranberries? Do a little.
Yes, I do believe we need to do some sparkling cranberries.
Absolutely. So this is, again, pretty quick and easy. And I've got my little rig set up here. Okay, tradesies. So this is, as I said, it came from Heidi Swanson at 101 Cookbook. She's a local cookbook author and does some really, really lovely stuff. And the only trick to this is you need two different kinds of sugar. The first sugar is you want to find an organic sugar that has slightly bigger crystals. So
Like a Demerara or something?
not to full Demerara, and you don't want sugar in the raw because that's too big. So here I've got regular granulated sugar, and next to it is the organic in the brown bowl.
Okay.
So very similar, but the organic has slightly larger crystals.
Okay.
And what you're going to do is you're going to take your cranberries and you're going to make some simple syrup. Hey, Malcolm, how do you make simple syrup?
Oh, you measure 1-to-1 by weight, water and sugar.
Yep.
And then you warm it a little bit and you mix it until the sugar is all dissolved.
So you make that simple syrup 1-to-1, and then you want to take it off the heat once it's warm and let it cool for just a minute or two. And then you're going to pour it over your cranberries. And you don't want it to be really hot. If the simple syrup is too hot, it can pop the cranberries, and that's not the point. We just want them to soak in this nice syrup. So you make your simple syrup, soak your cranberries in it overnight, and then the next day you're going to drain them, and then I'm going to pop them into the organic sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So can I use dry or do I have to use fresh cranberries?
Ooh, good point. Fresh cranberries. You absolutely want to use fresh cranberries for this. And then I'm going to pop them into the organic sugar and just roll them around. It really is really easy. And then you need to get them out, which is the slightly difficult part. I use a fish spatula or a slotted spoon, but I like the fish spatula. And you take them out and you just pop them onto a cooling track so that you get some air circulating around them. If you have any clumps of, if you haven't drained them well, you'll get these big clumps of sugar, and I just kind of knock those off. And then you just want to let them sit for a few hours because we want that sugar syrup to dry and let the sugar adhere to the cranberries. And then the reason we have that second regular granulated sugar is to fill in any of the gaps and to make it look a little brighter white and a little more sparkly. And so then once they've dried, and these have been drying for a while, I just take them and just give them a quick toss in granulated sugar, and that covers up any of your missing or any of the blank spots. And what you end up with is this beautiful sparkly little cranberry.
Ah, okay.
And it has just enough sugar on it so that you can eat them. They're sweet on the outside and crunchy, and then sour and crisp because it is a fresh cranberry. But these hold fantastically. I've held them for about 24 hours at room temperature in an airtight container. So you can make these ahead of time and then just keep them on hand. If you put them into the refrigerator, they tend to attract some moisture, so they don't hold well in the refrigerator. So I just usually make them the day before I want to use them. They're also fun to put on a cheese board or a charcuterie board, and so it kind of dresses things up. And we love to snack on them mixed in with almonds and candied citrus peel and the sparkling cranberries. And we make that as like a little snack mix to have at parties as well.
That would be
That sounds.
a glass of something sparkling.
Exactly, with a glass of something sparkling. So,
Oh.
yeah, so there you go. Those are some like quick and easy ideas. And now you've got your bubbles that you can pick out. And I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. We're getting near the end of our time. Is there one piece of recommendation that the three of you would like to offer to our folks at home as to how to celebrate this unique New Year's? Thoughts? What would you suggest?
Well, this is silly because we did a whole panel on dumplings, but for me, the New Year is always best celebrated with dumplings. So and it doesn't necessarily need to be the Chinese dumplings that we promoted pretty heavily in that session. There are lots of different kinds of dumplings from different cultures, and I think that if you want to use dumplings from your culture, that is totally awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Dumplings, they signify for a lot of people the new year. They signify new beginnings, and it's nice to be able to look forward to that.
I think my recommendation is we're going to probably have smaller celebrations. You might just be celebrating with the folks in your own home, but that's as good as reason as any to still splash out a little bit and treat yourselves well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like take that minute. I think a lot of us have been so focused on just sort of the day-to-day that it's a nice moment to step back and say, what can I do to treat myself nicely? Like what would be a treat for me as opposed, you know, and for my family and for my small group, and really make it special that way.
Okay. And Barbara?
And for me, you know, this has been a tough year. And so I think it's really important to just take a minute and remember the things that I'm grateful for. The things, the people and the things and what it is about this time that's been positive. And so I like to really just take a bit of time, especially this time of year, as we go into looking ahead to something new, being able to really start with something positive and to remember that, you know, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, there is. And here's to a very good tomorrow. Happy New Year's, Barbara, Jen, Malcolm, and Happy New Year's to you watching this program. May your 2020 be happy, healthy, and prosperous. And if you like this program and any of the others that you see on ConTinual, please like, share, follow, and subscribe, and leave a review. But most importantly, have a wonderful new year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.